A long time ago, in a small, quiet village, there lived a young girl named Chica. Chica was known all around for her kindness and beauty. She was loved by everyone who knew her. People would often see her helping her parents at home, greeting everyone with a bright smile as she walked through the village paths. Chica's family wasn't rich, but they were happy and close, and that was enough for them. The village was filled with simple people who worked hard each day. The villagers grew their own food, cared for animals, and treated each other like family. They followed old traditions that had been passed down for many generations. One of these traditions was a yearly festival held to honor the spirits of the land. Everyone looked forward to the festival because it was filled with music, dancing, and food. Among the villagers, Chica's warm personality and gentle heart made her special. She had a way of making people feel comfortable, and many of the village children looked up to her. The elders often praised her for being so well-behaved and respectful. But while most people admired her, not everyone was happy for her. There were 3 girls in the village who were not fond of Chica. Their names were Ada, Bisi, and Efe. These girls were often seen together, whispering and laughing among themselves. They envied Chica's popularity and the attention she received from others. In their hearts, they felt a quiet jealousy that only grew over time. While Chica was friendly and always tried to include them, they pretended to be her friends, but deep down, they disliked her. These feelings of envy made them determined to do something about it. They began to plan a way to get rid of Chica, to take away her place in the village. To others, they looked like kind friends, but they had a dark secret in their hearts. And for now, Chica had no idea about the danger that awaited her. As the days went by, the 3 girls, Ada, Bisi, and Efe, worked on their plan to harm Chica. They knew Chica's kindness was her weakness. They would use it to make her trust them even more. One bright afternoon, the girls approached Chica while she was gathering firewood near her home. They greeted her with big smiles, acting as if they were her best friends.
"Chica," Ada said with excitement, "have you heard about the big festival coming up?"
Chica smiled back, nodding.
"Yes, I love the festival. But my parents think it's best for me to stay home this year."
"Oh, that's so sad," Bisi said, pouting. "We were really hoping you would come with us." Efe, nodding in agreement, added, "It won't be the same without you, Chica. You should come. We'll all be together. It will be so much fun." Chica hesitated, looking down at the bundle of firewood in her arms. She had always wanted to go to the festival with friends, but she didn't want to disobey her parents. A few days before the big festival, Chica's parents were preparing to travel to visit a relative in a neighboring village. As they packed their things, Chica's mother noticed that her daughter had been spending more time with Ada, Bisi, and Efe, the 3 girls in the village who had only recently begun acting friendly toward her. Chica's mother felt something odd about their sudden interest in her daughter, as she had often seen the 3 whispering and casting looks at Chica from afar. Before leaving, her mother took her aside and said gently, "Chica, my dear, I want you to be careful. Not everyone who smiles at you is your friend. I know these girls have been spending more time with you, but something feels strange about it." Chica smiled, brushing off her mother's concerns. "Mama, they're just being kind. They mean no harm. Besides, everyone in the village is like family, right?" Her mother sighed. "You always see the best in people, my child. But remember to stay careful, and please don't go to the festival. It's being held in the next village, and it isn't safe to travel alone." Chica's father nodded in agreement. "Listen to your mother, Chica. We're giving you some chores to keep you busy while we're away. This way you'll have something to do, and you won't be tempted to wander off." Chica promised she would stay home. Her parents hugged her tightly before setting off, leaving her alone with her list of chores and a warning in her heart. She planned to follow their wishes and keep busy, even if part of her longed to see the excitement of the festival. But the very next morning, as Chica was sweeping the front yard, Ada, Bisi, and Efe appeared. They walked up to her with big smiles on their faces. "Chica, we've come to take you to the festival," Ada announced. Chica shook her head. "I can't go. My parents asked me to stay home, and they gave me chores to do." "Oh, don't worry about that," Bisi replied, waving her hand. "We'll help you with the chores. That way you'll be done quickly, and your parents will never know." Chica hesitated, looking down at her broom. I don't know. They told me it wasn't safe. Efe stepped forward, giving her a warm smile. We'll be with you the whole time, Chica. It's in the neighboring village, but we'll stay together and nothing bad will happen. Trust us. Their words made Chica feel a bit more confident. She had always wanted to go to the festival with friends, and her heart was touched by their kindness. The thought of spending a day at the festival, filled with music, dancing, and laughter, was hard to resist. She smiled, thinking about how exciting it would be to have friends by her side. All right, Chica said at last. I'll come with you, but we must finish all my chores first. The girls eagerly agreed, and together they worked through Chica's list of chores, bearing their hidden envy in their hearts. They laughed and chatted as they helped her, making it seem like they truly wanted her company. By the time the chores were done, Chica felt a warm sense of friendship, believing that these girls genuinely wanted to spend time with her. As they set off toward the neighboring village, Chica thought about her parents' warning but quickly pushed it aside. Her friends were with her after all, and they had been so kind in helping her with the chores. She convinced herself that there was nothing to worry about. Chica and the three girls set off toward the festival in the neighboring village, excitement filling the air as they laughed and chatted along the path. For Chica, this was a whole new experience. She had never left her own village, as her parents had always kept her close to home. But now, with her friends beside her, she felt brave and free. The sun shone brightly as they walked through open fields, past trees and along winding paths. Chica's heart beat faster with every step, thrilled at the thought of seeing a new place and meeting new people. Ada, BC, and Efe walked ahead, glancing back every now and then, smiling warmly, as if they were leading Chica on a grand adventure. After a while, they reached a large dark river that cut across the path. The water was deep and calm, almost unnaturally still, with a mysterious feeling hanging in the air. Chica looked at it curiously, wondering why the place seemed so silent. Ada, BC, and Efe moved forward without hesitation, carefully stepping onto the rocks that led across the river. They did not say anything to Chica about the river's strange rule, as they had no intention of keeping her safe on their way back. Chica, having never been here before, had no idea that crossing this river came with a hidden danger. In truth, there was a rule that anyone who crossed the river had to follow. It was said that the river was guarded by a mermaid who demanded an offering from each traveler when they returned. This offering was a token of respect to ensure safe passage back. Those who didn't bring an offering of food would be pulled into the river by the mermaid, never to be seen again. The three girls knew this rule well, as they had crossed the river many times before, but they kept silent, planning to use this knowledge against Chica. Chica followed the girls across the rocks, carefully balancing as she stepped. She looked around, fascinated by the strange beauty of the river and the peaceful silence that surrounded it. When they reached the other side, she breathed a sigh of relief, excited to be closer to the festival. Once they arrived at the neighboring village, Chica's eyes widened with wonder. The festival was more lively and colorful than anything she had seen before. Stalls lined the paths, filled with all kinds of food, treats, and handmade crafts. Musicians played cheerful tunes, and people danced in open spaces, their laughter filling the air. The scent of roasted food and sweet fruits drifted all around them. Chica felt her heart swell with happiness as she looked around. She was grateful to her friends for bringing her here, and her eyes sparkled as she took in the sights. She had never felt so free. As the four girls wandered through the festival, something began to happen that Ada, BC, and Efe had not expected. Many of the young men in the neighboring village couldn't take their eyes off Chica. Her beauty, combined with her gentle smile and humble nature, captivated everyone around her. They admired her simplicity and charm, and some of them even tried to get her attention. Among these young men was a particularly handsome boy named Chidi. He approached Chica with a friendly smile, his eyes warm and inviting. "Hello, my name is Chidi," he said, extending his hand. "I haven't seen you around here before. Are you new to the festival?" Chica shook his hand shyly, her cheeks turning a soft shade of pink. "Yes, I am. My friends brought me here for the first time today." Chidi's smile widened. "Well, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Would you like to walk around with me? I can show you some of the best parts of the festival." Chica looked over at her friends who were watching her with tense smiles, and then back at Chidi. She nodded, feeling a bit nervous but excited at the same time. "That would be nice. Thank you." The two of them wandered through the festival together, talking and laughing as they explored the different stalls and attractions. Chidi was kind and funny, and Chica found herself feeling comfortable with him. They shared stories and laughed, and by the end of the evening, Chica felt as if she had made a true friend. But as more people noticed, Chica, Ada, BC, and Afe grew bitter. They had expected Chica to be grateful to them for bringing her along, but instead, she was the one stealing all the attention. The young men, who would normally notice them, were now completely charmed by Chica. Ada's face grew tense, BC's eyes narrowed, and Afe clenched her fists, each one feeling a mix of anger and jealousy. The three girls huddled together, their eyes never leaving Chica as she laughed and talked with Chidi and the other villagers. "Look at her," Ada whispered, her voice filled with resentment. "She acts like she's better than us." "Yes," BC muttered, crossing her arms. "Everyone loves her as if we don't even exist." Ife glared at Chica from a distance. Maybe it's time we remind her that she's not so special after all. The three of them exchanged dark looks, their jealousy burning even brighter now. They knew that Chica wasn't aware of the mermaid's rule about offering food on the way back, and they planned to keep it that way. In their minds, this was the perfect chance to finally rid themselves of her. Chica, meanwhile, was oblivious to the bitterness growing in the hearts of her friends. She laughed, danced, and celebrated with Chidi and the other villagers, feeling happier than she had ever felt before. She believed that she was surrounded by friends who truly cared for her, never imagining that they were plotting against her. As the day wore on, Ada, BC, and Afe prepared themselves for what they intended to do next. And while Chica's heart was full of joy and trust, danger lay just ahead. Chica was still caught up in the joy of the festival, her eyes bright with excitement as she moved from stall to stall. She couldn't stop smiling, surrounded by laughter, music, and colorful decorations. For a brief moment, she forgot about her parents' warning. This was a day of freedom and happiness, something she had never experienced before. But suddenly, as she turned to look at some dancers, she froze. Standing at the edge of the crowd were her parents, their faces stern and angry. Chica's heart dropped. She knew she was in trouble. Before she could slip away, her parents spotted her, and her father strode toward her with a serious look in his eyes. "Chica," her mother's voice cut through the noise of the festival. "What are you doing here?" Chica lowered her head, feeling ashamed. "Mama, Papa, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disobey you." Her mother sighed, pulling her aside, away from the curious eyes of the villagers. "We trusted you to stay at home. We told you not to come here. But here you are, ignoring our warnings." Her father added, "Do you understand how dangerous this journey is? You should have listened to us and stayed at home. Now you need to go back immediately. This is no place for you, Chica." Chica nodded, her eyes downcast. She felt a pang of guilt in her heart. She hadn't meant to disappoint her parents, but the excitement of the festival and the kindness of her friends had made her feel safe. Just then, Ada, BC, and Efe appeared, pretending to look concerned. "Oh, Chica, is everything all right?" Ada asked, giving her a false look of sympathy. "Yes, her parents are here," BC whispered, smirking. Chica's parents barely acknowledged the three girls, too focused on their daughter. "Go home now, Chica, and don't take any more detours," her father warned. "Yes, Papa," Chica replied, her voice soft and sad. Her parents watched her walk off with the girls before turning back toward their relative's house, still upset but hoping she would learn from this. The three girls, however, exchanged quick, satisfied glances. They were fully aware of the river's rule, and with Chica now frightened and eager to get home, they had the perfect chance to put their plan into action. Quietly, they each packed a small portion of food for themselves, making sure they had something to offer the mermaid on their way back. They didn't say a word to Chica about it, acting as though there was nothing to worry about. Chica kept glancing back, her heart heavy with guilt. She felt foolish for disobeying her parents, and she wanted nothing more than to reach home and make things right. The other girls walked ahead, whispering and exchanging smirks, pleased that everything was going according to their plan. Finally, they reached the river, and the strange, quiet atmosphere settled around them once more. Chica felt an odd chill in the air, but she hurried forward, not wanting to linger. The girls, meanwhile, paused at the riverbank, each of them taking out the food they had packed as an offering. They looked at each other, grinning, knowing that this was their moment. As they prepared to cross, Chica noticed the girls holding out their food. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized that something was wrong. She had no food with her, no offering to give. She looked at her friends, panic growing in her eyes. "Ada, BC, Efe, please, can I have some of your food?" Chica asked, her voice shaking. "I didn't know we needed to bring an offering." The girls exchanged a quick, wicked glance and laughed. Ada smirked, pulling her food closer to herself. "Oh, Chica, I'm sorry, but we only have enough for ourselves." "Yes," BC added with a sneer, "we're not responsible for your mistakes." Chica felt her heart pound in her chest, her fear growing as she realized that her friends were not going to help her. She reached out desperately. "Please, just a little bit. I didn't know. I just need something." Efe stepped back, crossing her arms with a cold smile. "You should have thought about that before. We're not going to risk ourselves for you, Chica." The three girls turned their backs on her, each of them placing their food offerings by the riverbank. They crossed the river quickly, leaving Chica standing alone on the other side, helpless and terrified. Suddenly, the water began to ripple, and Chica felt a cold chill run down her spine. She looked at the river in horror as the calm surface shifted, revealing the outline of the mermaid rising from the depths. Her eyes glowed with anger as she looked at Chica, her expression fierce and unforgiving.
"You dare to cross my waters without an offering?"
The mermaid hissed, her voice echoing across the river. Chica tried to step back, but her feet felt rooted to the ground. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. All she could do was stare at the mermaid, her heart racing with fear. The mermaid's eyes narrowed. Those who do not respect the rule must face the punishment. Before Chica could react, the mermaid's hand shot out, cold and powerful, gripping her wrist tightly. Chica gasped, trying to pull away, but the mermaid's hold was strong. The icy water began to swirl around her, pulling her down toward the depths. "No, please!" Chica cried, struggling to free herself. "I didn't know. I'm sorry. Please!" But the mermaid's face remained cold and unfeeling. With one swift motion, she dragged Chica into the water. The last thing Chica saw was the dark, endless river closing over her as she was pulled under, her voice lost in the swirling depths. On the opposite riverbank, Ada, BC, and Efe watched with satisfaction as Chica disappeared into the water. They felt a sense of twisted triumph, their jealousy finally satisfied. Without a second thought, they turned and hurried back to their village, eager to enjoy their victory. Little did they know, however, that this betrayal would not go unnoticed. Ada, BC, and Ife returned to their village with smug smiles on their faces. With Chica gone, they felt certain they would finally gain the attention and admiration they'd always wanted. They imagined that, without Chica around, they would become the center of attention among the young men in the village. They walked confidently, exchanging satisfied glances, pleased with the success of their plan. The very next morning, however, they heard troubling news. Chica's parents had returned home and were anxiously searching for her. Chica's mother, looking worried and pale, went from house to house, asking if anyone had seen her daughter. No one had seen Chica since the day of the festival, and as word of her disappearance spread, the villagers gathered, their faces painted with worry and confusion. Eventually, Chica's mother came upon Ada, BC, and Efe, who were chatting quietly by the village square. "Girls!" Chica's mother called out, her voice filled with desperation. "You were with Chica at the festival, weren't you? Where is she? Why hasn't she come home?" The girls looked at each other, quickly putting on expressions of concern. Ada stepped forward, speaking carefully. "Yes, We were with her, but after a while she wandered off. We thought she would be right behind us. BC nodded, her face serious. We figured she stayed behind to enjoy the festival a bit longer. She seemed to be having a good time. Efe added, "We didn't think anything of it, Mom. Chica seemed fine, and we assumed she'd come home on her own." Chica's mother's face fell, her eyes filling with tears. "But Chica isn't like that. She wouldn't wander off alone, not without telling us." The villagers around them began to murmur, each person concerned and saddened by the news of Chica's disappearance. Chica was loved by everyone in the village, and the thought of her being lost or in danger filled their hearts with worry. One of the older women in the crowd spoke up, her voice low and troubled. "Maybe something happened to her by the river. That place has always had strange stories surrounding it." Another villager nodded, his face grim. "It's possible that something mystical has taken her. There are things in this world we cannot explain." As the whispers spread, Chica's parents grew more and more distressed. Her father, trying to stay strong, put his arm around his wife, who was trembling with grief. "She'll come back. She has to. Chica is a smart girl. She'll find her way home." But days passed, and still, there was no sign of Chica. Her mother became pale and weary, her eyes hollow from sleepless nights spent searching and waiting. She would often sit outside their house, gazing at the path, hoping that her daughter would come walking up to her with that familiar bright smile. But each night ended in sorrow, as Chica remained lost. The village mourned Chica's absence deeply, with people whispering prayers for her safe return and lighting small candles outside their homes in her memory. Some villagers believed she had met with an unfortunate accident, while others suspected that mystical forces had taken her. Meanwhile, Ada, BC, and Efe continued their lives as if nothing had happened, pretending to share in the village's grief. They offered comforting words to Chica's parents, helped search along the paths, and spoke kindly of Chica whenever they were asked. But in truth, they were pleased, enjoying the new attention from the young men in the village who now took notice of them. However, as rumors grew and whispers spread, the girls began to feel a faint unease. They decided to return to the river, hoping to make sure that no trace of their betrayal remained. As they reached the riverbank, they looked around carefully, scanning the quiet, dark water and reassuring themselves that their secret was hidden well. But then, a soft sound caught their attention. Perched on a tree branch above the river was a little parrot, singing a sad, haunting melody. The girls paused, listening carefully, and their hearts turned cold as they realized what the bird was singing. The parrot's song seemed to echo their actions, each line of its mournful tune revealing pieces of the terrible truth of what they had done to Chica. The girls looked at one another in horror, realizing that if anyone heard the parrot's song, their secret would be uncovered. Without a word, Ada, BC, and Efe made a quick decision. They picked up stones from the riverbank and began throwing them at the bird, desperate to silence it forever. The bird fluttered and dodged, but eventually, one of their stones hit its mark, and the parrot's song stopped abruptly. The small creature fell silent, disappearing into the shadows of the trees. The girls breathed a sigh of relief, certain they had erased the last trace of their secret. Days passed, and Chica's parents continued to search tirelessly, their hope fading but their love for their daughter as strong as ever. Each day they walked the village paths, calling her name and asking everyone they met if they had seen any sign of her. They were met with pitying looks and sad shakes of the head, and yet they kept searching, refusing to give up. One evening, as they were returning home with heavy hearts, a faint sound caught their attention. It was the soft, broken chirping of a little parrot hidden in the bushes by the side of the path. The bird's feathers were ruffled, and it looked weak, struggling to keep itself upright. Chica's parents stopped, surprised to see a bird in such a state. They knelt down to look closer, and to their astonishment, the bird began to speak. With a trembling voice, the parrot sang a sad, haunting tune, its melody filled with sorrow and pain. Slowly its words became clearer, and Chica's parents listened with growing shock as the bird recounted everything it had witnessed at the river. Through its broken song, the parrot revealed how Ada, Bisi, and Efe had led Chica across the river, knowing full well about the mermaid's rule, but keeping it a secret from her. It told them how, on the way back, the three girls had packed food for themselves as an offering, but had deliberately refused to give Chica any when she begged for help. The parrot's song painted a vivid picture of how Chica had pleaded for their kindness, only to be met with cruel laughter as the girls walked away, leaving her alone to face the wrath of the mermaid. Chica's parents felt a surge of anger and disbelief as they listened. They could hardly believe what they were hearing. They had always thought of Ada, Bisi, and Efe as friends of their daughter, never suspecting that they were capable of such betrayal. Tears filled Chica's mother's eyes as she imagined her daughter's fear and helplessness at that moment. Chica's father clenched his fists, his heart filled with grief and rage. The parrot, seeing the pain on their faces, struggled to speak once more. I saw it all. Chica is lost beneath the river, taken by the mermaid because of those girls' wickedness. But there may still be a way. Follow me to the river. If you have the courage, there may be a chance to save her. Chica's parents exchanged a determined look, their grief hardening into resolve. They would not abandon their daughter, no matter how impossible the task seemed. Wiping away her tears, Chica's mother nodded, and her father placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. They were ready to do whatever it took to bring their daughter back, no matter the cost. The parrot led them through the village and down the path toward the river, guiding them as best as it could despite its injuries. The journey was long and filled with silence, the weight of their emotions pressing heavily upon them. Finally, they reached the edge of the dark, silent river, its waters calm and deep under the evening sky. As they stood there, staring at the water where their daughter had vanished, they felt both fear and hope. The river had taken their beloved child, and now they were ready to face whatever lay beneath its surface to bring her back. The river was known for its mysteries, but their love for Chica was stronger than any fear or doubt. They would face the mermaid, and they would bring Chica home. Their voices trembling as they called out into the silence. "O great mermaid of the river, we beg you, please return our daughter to us. She is our only child, our joy and light. We cannot live without her." For a long moment, the river remained calm and quiet. But then, ripples spread across the water, and a figure began to emerge. The mermaid, her hair dark and flowing like the currents of the river, rose from the depths, her piercing eyes fixed upon them. Beside her, standing in silence with a hollow expression, was Chica, now dressed in simple clothes and with an empty look in her eyes. She looked tired and worn, her once bright spirit dulled by the weight of her servitude. "Your daughter is mine now," the mermaid said coldly. "She crossed my waters without offering an offering, and now she serves me. Such is the law of the river." Chica's parents fell to their knees, pleading, "Please, we beg you, she is our only child and we cannot live without her. Our hearts cannot bear this loss. Please have mercy." The mermaid tilted her head, considering their words. After a moment, her lips curved into a faint, almost cruel smile. "If you truly want her back, then you must prove the depth of your love. Cross this river without any support, no bridge, no boat, and no help. If you succeed, I will set her free. But if you fail, you will remain here, bound to me as my servants, just as she is." The parents exchanged a fearful glance. They knew how deep and dangerous the river was, and the challenge seemed impossible. But they were prepared to try anything to save their daughter. Together they joined hands and bowed their heads, praying silently to the gods for guidance and strength. As they stepped toward the river, a murmur spread among the villagers who had gathered nearby. Word of the parents' ordeal had spread quickly, and many of the villagers had come to watch, their hearts filled with sympathy and support. Some of them began to call out words of encouragement, their voices ringing out over the water. "Stay strong," one elder shouted. "Your love will guide you through." Meanwhile, news of the ordeal reached Ada, Bisi, and Efe. Realizing that their cruel scheme had been exposed, the three girls panicked. Fearful of the villagers' judgment and punishment, they fled into the forest, hoping to hide from the truth they could no longer escape. But as they wandered deeper into the thick trees, they soon found themselves lost and frightened. Shadows seemed to close in around them, and the dense, dark forest became a prison they could not escape. In their fear, the girls began to curse Chica, blaming her for everything. "If it weren't for her, we wouldn't be in this mess," Ada hissed bitterly. "Why couldn't she just stay out of our way?" BC muttered. "She ruined everything," Efe added, her voice shaking with anger and fear. Back at the river, the gathered villagers watched as Chica's parents prepared to take their first steps into the water. Their prayers and chants grew louder, filling the air with a sense of unity and hope. Chica's parents took strength from the support of their village, their hearts steady as they stepped into the water, determined to face whatever lay ahead. The river was cold and deep, and with each step they felt the currents trying to pull them under. But they held on to each other, their love and commitment unshaken. They continued forward, their steps slow and careful as the water rose higher around them. They prayed silently. Just when it seemed as though they could go no further, a sudden wind swept across the river, gentle but strong. It wrapped around them like a protective force, steadying their steps and guiding them forward. The villagers gasped in awe, sensing that a miracle was unfolding before their eyes. With the help of the magical wind, Chica's parents crossed the river, their love and courage shining brightly for all to see. When they reached the other side, the mermaid watched them in silence, her expression softening as she took in the sight of their unwavering devotion. Moved by their courage and the depth of their love, the mermaid's cold gaze melted, and a hint of compassion appeared in her eyes. She nodded slowly, a hint of respect in her voice. "Your love has proven true. I release your daughter." With a wave of her hand, the mermaid freed Chica from her servitude. Chica's eyes filled with tears of relief and joy as she ran into her parents' arms. They held each other tightly, their hearts overflowing with love and gratitude. The villagers cheered, their voices echoing through the air as they celebrated Chica's return. Together, Chica and her parents made their way back to the village, surrounded by the warmth and support of their community. They were finally whole again, and the love that had guided them through their darkest moments would continue to protect and strengthen them in the days to come. The day after Chica's return was filled with joy and relief, but also with a quiet sorrow. The story of her ordeal spread through the village, reaching every corner and every heart. As people heard about how Ada, BC, and Efe had tricked Chica, leaving her to suffer at the mercy of the mermaid, they were shocked and saddened. The villagers, who had once thought of the three girls as friends and neighbors, now looked upon them with disbelief and anger. That anyone could be so driven by jealousy was a painful reminder of the dangers that envy could bring. The matter was soon brought before the king, who was both angered and disappointed by the betrayal. He called for Ada, BC, and Efe to be brought to his court, where they stood in silence, their heads hung low as they faced the weight of their actions. The entire village gathered to watch, their eyes filled with disappointment and grief for what these young women had done. The king's voice boomed through the hall, filled with a stern authority. He began, "You have betrayed not only Chica, but the trust of this entire village. You allowed jealousy to consume your hearts and plotted against an innocent girl, bringing sorrow upon her family and fear upon our village. Such actions cannot go unpunished." The girls said nothing, their faces pale as they listened to the king's words. They knew there was no excuse for what they had done. As their eyes scanned the crowd, they could see the faces of the villagers they had once laughed and talked with, now looking upon them with a mixture of sadness and anger. The king continued, his voice unwavering. "As punishment for your betrayal, you will be publicly humiliated for all to witness, and you will be banished from this village. You shall never return, and let this be a lesson for all who let envy poison their hearts." The girls were led through the village, their heads bowed in shame as the villagers watched in silence. Some people shook their heads in disappointment, while others looked away, saddened by what had become of them. The girls had lost everything, and they knew they had only themselves to blame. They would carry the weight of their actions as they wandered far from the only home they had ever known. Once the girls had left, The village turned its focus back to a celebration of joy and relief. Chica was safe, her family was whole again, and the painful memory of betrayal was replaced by a renewed sense of unity. The villagers gathered to rejoice at Chica's return, filling the air with laughter and music. Friends and neighbors came to Chica's home, bringing gifts and offering words of kindness, happy to see her safe and sound. There was a warmth in the air, a reminder of the power of love, honesty, and family bonds. Later, Chica, feeling a sense of gratitude, decided to visit the river once more. She wanted to thank the mermaid, whose change of heart had given her a second chance at life. With a small offering in hand, she walked to the edge of the river and called out softly, "Great mermaid of the river, I have come to thank you." Slowly the water rippled, and the mermaid emerged, her expression calm yet thoughtful. Chica looked at her with respect, noticing a softness in her eyes that had not been there before. "I see you have returned," the mermaid said, her voice less cold than it had been before. "What brings you back here, child?" "I came to thank you," Chica replied. "Your mercy allowed me to return to my family, and I am forever grateful." The mermaid looked at Chica for a long moment, a wistful expression crossing her face. She sighed, glancing down at the water as if remembering something long forgotten. "Once I was like you," she began, her voice laced with sadness. "I was a young maiden, filled with hopes and dreams, and I fell in love with a handsome man from a faraway village. But his mother, who was a powerful witch, despised me and cursed me to this river, where I would remain forever." Chica listened in silence, her heart aching for the mermaid's sorrow. "Over time, my bitterness grew," the mermaid continued. "I watched people pass by, loved ones and families, and I began to resent them, for I had lost my own chance at love and happiness. My heart became hardened, and I vowed to punish anyone who crossed my waters without honoring my rule." The mermaid looked at Chica, her gaze softening. "But when I saw how deeply your parents loved you, how they were willing to risk everything to bring you back, it touched something in me that I thought had died long ago. Their love reminded me that maybe, just maybe, not everyone in this world is cruel. There are still hearts filled with kindness and sacrifice." Chica felt a tear slip down her cheek. She had never known that the mermaid carried such pain. "Thank you for sharing your story," she said softly. "I will never forget what you did for me." The mermaid nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. "Go now, Chica, and live a life of love and kindness. Cherish your family, for that love is more powerful than any curse or spell." With those final words, the mermaid sank back into the river, disappearing into its depths. Chica stood there for a moment, a feeling of peace settling over her. She knew that the mermaid's heart had softened, even if only slightly, and she hoped that one day the river spirit might find peace herself. The village celebration continued in full swing, with songs and laughter filling the air as everyone rejoiced in Chica's safe return. People gathered around her, congratulating her on her bravery and marveling at her story. Among the crowd, a young man approached, dressed in fine clothes that hinted at nobility. He moved confidently, yet his face softened as he caught sight of Chica. It was the village prince, who came to join in the celebration after hearing of the incredible events that had taken place. But as he drew closer, he paused, recognizing Chica as the same beautiful girl he had met at the festival. She had never left his mind since that day, her gentle spirit and captivating smile lingering in his thoughts. Now, standing before him, she looked even more beautiful, with a grace and strength that seemed to shine from within. "Chica," he said softly, a smile spreading across his face. "It is you." Chica looked up, and her eyes widened in surprise. "Chidi?" she gasped, recognizing him immediately as the kind young man she had met at the festival. The prince nodded, taking her hand in his. "Yes, my real name is Prince Chidi. I came to the festival in disguise, hoping to meet the villagers without them knowing who I was. But you were unforgettable. I've thought of you every day since we met." Chica blushed, her heart fluttering as she remembered their time together. Prince Chidi looked at her with admiration, his gaze filled with respect and affection. "Your story has touched me deeply," he said. "Your courage, your kindness, and the love your family has shown. I have seen that your heart is noble and true, and I would be honored if you would marry me, Chica." The crowd erupted into cheers, thrilled by the prince's proposal. Chica's parents, filled with joy, nodded in support, their eyes shining with pride. Chica, overcome with emotion, smiled and gave her answer. "Yes, Prince Chidi," she whispered, her voice full of happiness. "I would be honored to marry you." The village prepared a grand wedding for them, a joyous ceremony filled with flowers, music, and blessings. The villagers danced and celebrated, grateful for Chica's safe return and for the hope her story had brought to their community. Chica and Chidi exchanged their vows under the bright sun, surrounded by family and friends who wished them happiness and love. After the wedding, Chica shared the mermaid's story with Prince Chidi, telling him of the sorrow and bitterness that had trapped her in the river. The prince listened intently, his heart moved by the tale of the once beautiful maiden who had been cursed to live in the water. Inspired by Chica's compassion, Prince Chidi decided that he would do everything in his power to help lift the mermaid's curse. He called upon the chief priest of the kingdom, asking him to perform the necessary rituals to break the curse. With the guidance of the gods, the priest prepared the rites, offering prayers and making sacred offerings at the riverbank. The villagers gathered once more, watching in hope as the chief priest chanted and invoked blessings upon the river, seeking to end the mermaid's suffering. As the final words of the ritual were spoken, the waters of the river began to shimmer, and a soft light rose from beneath the surface. The mermaid emerged, her face transformed from sadness to a peaceful smile. Her scales gleamed like jewels, and her eyes were filled with a warmth that had not been there before. The curse was broken, and she was free at last. "Thank you, Chica," the mermaid said, her voice soft with gratitude. "Your kindness has given me a second chance." With one last look of thanks, the mermaid disappeared beneath the water, her spirit finally at peace. The river calmed, its waters glistening under the sun, and the villagers cheered, knowing that their village was now free from the mermaid's torments. Chica and Prince Chidi returned to the village as a beloved couple, cherished by everyone for their bravery and kindness. In time, Chica and Chidi built a life filled with love, laughter, and joy. They honored their families and served their people with kindness and humility. Peace returned to the village, and the river remained calm, a reminder of the power of forgiveness and the strength of true love. And so, Chica and her family, along with the entire village, lived happily ever after, their hearts forever touched by the story of the mermaid, the strength of family bonds, and the joy of new beginnings.